Hello there, and welcome to the Unlock Book Club. You are in for an absolute treat today. We are so excited to be joined by author and editor-in-chief of DIVA magazine, Roxy Bourdillon. I'm going to be talking all about her brand new book, which is brilliant. What a Girl Wants, a true story of sexuality and self-discovery. It was really hard to say what a girl wants there without doing Christina in my head. Roxy is going to be in conversation with the wonderful Shah Bailey, part of the We Create Space Collective, and all-round hero. This conversation is part of the Unlock Book Club, and we are all about platforming and showcasing authors who are harnessing their voices, their experience, their leadership to create positive change through their work. And we're really glad that Roxy said yes to this, and you'll be hearing all about her story, her lessons learned along the way, the publishing process, all of those things that make the book club really, really rich. My name is Neil Hudson-Basing. My pronouns are he, him. I'm the Community and Events Director for We Create Space. For those who need a visual description, I have blonde, shaggy, wavy hair, got a couple of piercings, a bit of a gingery, stubbly beard, and a white We Create Space t-shirt. I am branded today. Just to take you through the agenda, so we've got a bit of welcome and scene setting. Hey, there's going to be a short opening grounding exercise. Roxy's going to be doing a reading, and then we'll be in conversation with Shah, and there'll be plenty of time for your questions too. Just to take you through a little bit about what Unlock is, it's essentially our queer leadership network, and it's powered by We Create Space. So it's a community-led learning platform and network supporting queer leaders in business and in life. And what we want to do is equip people with the tools to thrive, create spaces for people to learn, grow, and connect with each other and reach their full best queer potential. So our network is made up of lots of different people, from LGBTQ plus future leaders to professionals, entrepreneurs, leadership experts, you name it, everyone's in it, and it's a great way to get together and learn best practice, tools, take tips, takeaways, all those things. And we do that through a variety of ways: workshops, retreats, networking, resources, and more. So we would love you to get involved in our Unlock event series. We have our book club, we have masterclasses, and we also have our Queer Leadership 101, which is our 30-minute LinkedIn bite-sized series. So do dive into some of those. We'd love to see you. And I'm going to hand over to my wonderful colleague Shah for our group agreement. Shah, over to you.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name's Shah Bailey. My pronouns are she, her. And for those who need a audio visual description, I'm a woman of colour with curly black hair. And today I'm wearing a white shirt with orange hearts all over it. So before we go into the conversation, just to introduce myself quickly, I'll say I have gay jobs and day jobs, but they're all around connecting people, holding spaces, joy, education, and celebration. I think it is also important to say that I do write features for DIVA magazine. I know Roxy very well, and I'm exceptionally excited to have this conversation about her brand new book. With that in mind, we always like to hold the spaces with We Create Space with an open mind and an open heart. Some of the themes in the book can be quite triggering. If I was to sum up this book, I would say it's bold, it's brave, it's beautiful, and it's raw. Roxy's done an incredible job of being vulnerable and candid. But as we discuss the topic today, please be mindful of things that might be triggering or activating for you. Allow yourself the space you need to process or unpack anything that we discuss, and be as gentle with yourselves as you intend to be with each other. I believe in order to kick off the session, which I'm really excited about, we're going to have a opening reading from the lady herself. So I'll hand over to Roxy so she can do the opening poll and then her reading.
Thank you so much, Shah, for that gorgeous introduction and for already creating space for us all to be lovely and safe and honest and open. My name is Roxy Bourdillon, or Bourdillon if you're feeling continental. My pronouns are she, her. I am a writer, a debut author, and the editor-in-chief of DIVA magazine. So as Shah said, we would love to hear from you. So I've written my memoir talking about my own story. What words would you use to describe your coming out journey? So do scan the QR code or use the link in the chat box, and then you can share your own thoughts on that, the words you'd use to describe your coming out journey. And we have another bonus question for you. If you were going to write your memoir, what would you call it? So we'll put those questions out there, and I will get on with a bit of reading, I think. Oh, we've got people's words coming in already. That's exciting.
Bringing those up.
Oh, thank you.
I can definitely relate to the enlightening part about the coming out journey. I think we'll probably discuss more about your enlightening along the way, but definitely freeing and enlightening the words that I would also use to describe the book. So it's fun that that's come up with people's ideas as well.
Got some great words coming up there.
Curious, freeing, a bit weird. I love how honest that is.
Dramatic is very honest and real as well,
Yeah.
and relatable. Positive. Yeah, I like that.
I like, oh my.
Brilliant. I was going to answer this, but I have absolutely no idea, and I can't wait to find out how you got to this. But what I will say is it's a difficult question to answer. But when I was listening to the lyrics of What a Girl Wants, I was almost thinking about, as a reader of your book, singing those lyrics to you in the most platonic way, in the most loving platonic way, because you've almost gifted what queer women need in this book. And so I'm really interested to see, actually. I can't actually see that screen. We know I'm sort of averse to wearing my contact lenses. I'm not hungry, but I could eat. Unapologetic as that word. Brown girl in a spin, go for it. And little bit much, love that.
Those are all fabulous. Those are all really good.
Much better than I can do. But Roxy, will you give us a reading, please?
Yes, I will. Thank you very much. I'm going to do two short readings. So this is a memoir, this book. It starts when I am 13 years old and deeply in the closet, and then you go on a wild, hilarious, humiliating, and hopefully moving and powerful ride all the way through my teens and my 20s up to my 30s and being an out woman and editor-in-chief of DIVA. But the bit I'd like to read for you first is from near the beginning of the book. The first time Cassie kisses me, it is, without a doubt, the most exciting thing that has ever happened in my life. Okay, so my day-to-day routine is hardly a non-stop rock and roll thrill fest. I don't get my kicks hooking up with groupies and chucking tellies out of hotel windows. I'm a 13-year-old lass from Leeds, not Jarvis bloody Cocker. The edgiest thing I've done to date is incur a library fine for an overdue Babysitters Club book. By contrast, with her mischievous grin and penchant for innuendo, Cassie seems to promise adventure. In the context of my own mundane existence, the Cassie kiss is wild. It is most definitely something. It hasn't come completely out of the blue either. We've been building up to this watershed smooch for some time now. I'm talking months of snuggling up at sleepovers while we watch rom-coms about straight people falling in love. Cuddling turns into massages, turns into lengthy back rubs to Madonna's Ray of Light album, turns into this moment right now, this kiss, the kiss of no return, the kiss that blows my world up, the kiss that changes everything. We pull apart and look at each other. I feel nervous. She seems bold. Neither of us says anything. Our mouths meet again, and it is soft, 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 and slow, so slow. So this is how it starts. This is who we are when no one is watching. So that is a little taster from near the beginning of the book. And as well as it being a memoir that takes you on this journey through my life and my self-discovery and my sexuality and my experience moving through the world as a woman who happens to really, really love women in a world that can make you feel terrible about both of those things. In between each chapter, I had these little interludes that kind of offer a moment either to move the story forward or to reflect on where we are, where I am personally, or where we are culturally at that point, to add a bit of relief or a bit of looking at things through a different lens to mark my way through the story. So I'm going to read you one of those interludes now. Things I have said to bouncers at gay clubs. Yes, I do know this is a gay bar, because I am, in fact, gay. No, really, I'm very, very gay. What do you mean I don't look like a lesbian? I'm a lesbian, and this is what I look like. Can we not? I just want to party with my people. I'm a lesbian. Seriously, I'll prove it. I can name like all the characters in the L Word. Shane, Bet, Dana, Dana's cat, Mr. Pickles. What more do you want from me? Look, I should warn you, I know literally all the lyrics to the L Word theme tune, and if you don't let me in, I will have no choice but to sing them at you until you can't take it anymore. Sandy Toksvig is my auntie. She's not. You wait till she hears about this. Please stop oppressing me. I just want to drink cheap wine and dance with my brethren to Kylie's cheesiest hits. Femme lesbians are real and valid and deserve to get embarrassingly smashed with their friends. I'm a lesbian. I read DIVA magazine. I'm a lesbian. I write for DIVA magazine. I'm a lesbian. I am the editor-in-chief of DIVA magazine. Don't believe me? Hang on. This is my photo on the DIVA website. Now, please let me in or I will write an article about this. You do know you're literally stopping gay patrons from entering the gay bar? Oh my God, are you the real reason gay nightlife is dying out? Yes, I really am gay. Why else would a woman this glamorous have nails this short? So that is a little taster of of the book.
An absolutely delicious taster. In fact, when I finished the book the first time round, because I took my time with it the first time, I felt like I needed to almost lick each of my fingers because it was so delicious. It was like getting all the gossip, but all the inspiration and all of the love at the same time. So, before we get into the conversation, well done. Well done. It's so great to exist in a time where a book like this can exist and queer women can look at each other eye to eye and give each other their flowers and say, I'm so glad to exist at the same time as you. Thank you for existing. Thank you for putting this in the world. I wish this existed when I came out. So thank you. Bloody marvelous. So reading the book, I laughed, I cried, I felt every emotion going. And I thought to myself after, when you had the idea of, I'm going to write my memoir, did you envisage, first of all, how did that idea come about? But also, did you envisage having to do so much work and unpack so much trauma and navigate so much stuff? Because it is literally all in here.
Oh my goodness. So I'm so glad you liked the book, Shah. It's so lovely for you to say that. And it's almost nerve-wracking, especially when people that you know and people you admire, like yourself, when they read the book. And then it's such a relief that you like it and you enjoyed it. And then the other thing is there's like a little shift because we know each other very well, but we do work together. So now it's suddenly like, oh, Shana, it's all about my sex life in mid-20s, you know, like suddenly you know all sorts of things about me. I knew bits about me before, but now you got the whole story.
The whole shebang.
The
And you
whole
know what?
shebang.
I feel like we often as people, we think the more people know, the less they'll think of us. But honestly, the more I've found out, the more I think of you. So rest assured.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much for saying that. So, how did I get the idea? So, I got the idea for What a Girl Wants because I kept thinking about these two contrasting points in my life. Me as a 13-year-old, deeply in the closet, even though I was secretly snogging my mate and had a colossal crush on Jet from Gladiators, yet still I couldn't even look at the possibility that I might not be completely straight. And then me, an out woman in my 30s, who's not just come out and is a lesbian, but also like I've come out in the biggest possible way. Like I'm a professional lesbian. I'm editing the biggest sapphic magazine. Like we get it, Rox. You like women. It's okay. But like it's so I've come from one extreme to another. So I thought, well, that's interesting. That's, you know, the beginning and the end of a story, isn't it? But what's the middle? How does it actually look as a woman who's also a queer woman to navigate the world and to get from that one point all the way through the trials and tribulations and joys and heartache to the other? And that I thought had potential to be yeah, to be an interesting, hopefully relatable, hopefully entertaining story. And the other thing you said about, did I realize sort of what I was getting into? Did I know how much trauma I was going to unpack? No, no, I didn't. No, I didn't. I thought when I originally envisioned the book, I thought I knew I was going to talk honestly about things that had happened in my life. But then when you actually sit down to write the thing, you're taking these real events that have happened to you and you're then, you know, putting them into this story so you can take people on a journey. And it's not that it's therapy writing the book, because it's not. I mean, I definitely need therapy after writing the book. That's on my to-do list. As soon as I stop as soon as I get some time off, gonna go check into therapy. So it's not therapy writing it, but it is true that I unpacked a lot of stuff and I interrogated a lot of stuff from my life. And I really tried to look at what it was actually like. I wanted to be honest and raw and truthful while also being hopefully entertaining and uplifting where possible. So yeah, no, I didn't quite realize what I was getting into, but but hopefully people can get something out of the book.
Yeah, well, like there are definitely like nuggets of wisdom in there. And I think the way that you have told your story with those extra bits, those text messages, those diary entries, they're so relatable and they're so funny that you've somehow made all of these really tricky things to navigate somehow light-hearted enough for us to be a part of. And that's what you really get from the book. You feel like you're right there with you. It's really brave. I feel like I know all of the members of your family, and I want to know more. You've used humor to highlight some things that are really not funny, you know, especially some of the things you talk about in earlier life around your teenage years. Talk to me about the power of humor. How does that as a writer influence what you do, and what's the impact that you're hoping to have by doing it in such a funny way?
So I think even before I get to me as a writer, I think me as a person, I think that humor is a massive way that you and that I communicate with people, engage with people, connect with people, make them feel warm and safe and entertained and seen. But also I think it's a survival tool. I think
Mhm.
like when you're navigating those difficult things and those dark times and those tricky relationships, for me, certainly, I've found that humor is a source of a coping mechanism, because if you can laugh, it lightens it a little bit somehow, and you get that momentary relief from the heaviness, from the pain, from the suffering. So I think just on a personal level, humor is super important and always has been. And my favorite people are funny people. And I also think as queer people, like we've got a super fine-tuned funny bone because we've had to, and also because we're looking at the world kind of as outsiders from the off, aren't we? So that gives us an interesting take on things, which often leads to humor. And then as a writer, I think for me it's all about how can you take the reader on the most engaging journey. And I always want it to be a journey. I don't want to just talk to them about the pain. I don't want to just be doing jokes all the time and there's no meat behind that. I want to be able to take them, to make them laugh, to make them cry, to make them think, to make them feel galvanized, to make them feel quietly reflective, and also hopefully to entertain them, you know, to bring them joy in their life. So for me, humor is kind of a vital part of writing, and I'm very interested in writing funny stuff, but I always want there to be a bit more to it than just funny stuff.
Well, it definitely has got more to it than just funny stuff. It's definitely really surprising, actually, that you've been able to be so vulnerable in this book. As I sort of flicked through the pages, well, you know, I looked through the contents, I had a little look at what some of the chapters were called, and some of them made me go, and I think as somebody who I see, you know, I call you Lady Bossington. You are that icon. You talk about, you know, you talk about minority stress in the book. You talk about femininity. You talk about being high femme and the battles and the struggles. And for part of the book, you know, in my world, you are that character. You've always been her. But to go back and see you struggling as a writer, not thinking that you're enough, you know, to imagine that you would be here. I imagine for parts of the book, that version of Roxy would never have seen herself here. So talk to me a little bit about what that was like, building that resilience and now being the editor-in-chief of, you know, DIVA magazine. Wow. You're a wow. It's an applause. It's giving applause.
I think that I would never have envisioned that this would be my career. I always loved being creative. I always loved reading and writing and telling stories and entertaining people. But I don't know how much self-belief I've got. I never sort of necessarily saw it in my future. I would love to have seen it in my future, but I don't think I did. I think that I had a lot of shame, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of anxiety, a lot of feeling not innately good enough. And I think that professionally, my ambition was just to make being creative into my living, but I didn't have any network. I didn't know anyone in any of that, in any of those worlds. I wanted to do like, you know, training in journalism or something like that, but I couldn't afford the fees. And for a long time, like not just momentarily, like my entire 20s, I'm just like knocking on the door of the media world and the creative worlds, desperately trying to get let in. And I don't know, but I'm probably knocking on the wrong house, and everyone else is down the road doing great things, and I just don't know how to begin to access that space. So for me, it was a long journey to get to somewhere where I was doing that thing of making a living while also being creative. And I think that also for a long time, I thought that maybe the reason I'm not making it as a writer and I'm getting so many knockbacks is because I'm a lesbian. Maybe nobody wants to hear from some random leser from Leeds. And that definitely was something that I carried for a long time. But then I think it was just, I kept doing it, I kept at it. And eventually, really eventually, like after 10 years eventually I got somewhere with it. And then it's interesting because the ambition was always to be, or the dream was always to be creative. But the bit of the dream that I didn't really have and didn't really understand was the part about not only being creative, but also creating work and being a part of work that is meaningful, hopefully meaningful to our community and to women and to other people, but also meaningful to me. That was a part of it that maybe I hadn't really understood would become part of what I do.
Wow. Well, that just off track from my questions for a second, because that just reminds me of a part in the book where you're talking about dancing and shrinking yourself and leaving a relationship and recognizing that you can be free again. Does that sort of speak to your position, I guess, in the community, being out, like you are a professional lesbian? I think, I can't, what is it that you say, you're lesbian for a living and you're lesbian on your days off? So what is the sort of like lesson there around, yeah, what is the lesson there for you? What is the wisdom there?
I think that ever since I was little, I have always been someone who felt not good enough and felt a lot of shame, not just around my sexuality, also around my body, around my personality, around just everything, just everything. And I think that I've also always been a people pleaser for sure. And I think I still am quite a lot. But I think when I was younger, that was really chronic. That was really full on, the people pleasing instinct to try and make other people love me and also to try and make other people feel comfortable. I think I've always wanted, I don't like anyone to not feel okay. And if it means that I push myself into an uncomfortable position to then make them feel safe and warm and good, then that's something I'll naturally do. And so so I think that that's really been a life lesson of like, you can try and do that, but it's not sustainable long term. And that actually who you are when you feel your freest, that's your truest self. So you mentioned there like leaving a relationship. And there were lots of things that were good about that relationship. Apologies, Naomi, because it wasn't Naomi.
We
But
love Naomi.
we love Naomi. We
All
love
love to
Naomi, my
Naomi.
partner. But it was also true that there was a point in that relationship where I saw how different I was being in that relationship to make this woman, to try and be her dream person. And I saw how I was being there, and then I saw how I was being when I was with my best friends. And the person I was with my best friends laughed loudly, danced with abandon, was warm and loving in abundance. And that was who I felt I was and who I felt I wanted to be. And yet I was finding myself in a position where I was toning all of that down. And then it was like a case of I want to get back to me and I want to get back to feeling like myself. And it's true in relationships, but it's also true professionally, because for a long time, I guess I was trying to fit into a box maybe of what I thought people wanted from a writer. But actually, when I finally got a job at DIVA and started writing about queer stuff and not trying to play that down or make it palatable, like writing authentically and honestly, actually that was liberating personally, but also it was actually an act of expansion, like an act of blossoming and opening up, that then led to all these exciting things. So it was a positive thing in the end.
So following on from that, there's this theme in the book. Well, I'm calling it this theme from what I've observed, and it's almost like your self-reflection is almost like looking at two people. It's very oxymoronic. There's like this version of you, and then there's this version of you. There's one that's sort of super shy and bookish and more introvert, and one that wants to have attention and be seen and take up space. And so has this sort of process helped marry the two, or are the two supposed to exist? Is that something that you consider still exists? Is it a strength? Is it a blessing and a curse? Talk to me about how that has shown up for you, and how that contributes to you being such a incredible, authentic, iconic leader and icon to me personally, and for so many other letters.
I think that um, I think that it's part of me. So in the book, as well as talking about so many different things, I talk about my relationship with my granny, and my granny was my absolute heart and my world. And when I was a little girl, she used to tell me about this thing that had happened when we'd been at some kind of family event, and they'd said suddenly to me as a little girl, right, you've got to recite a poem. And then she said that she looked at me and my little face like got really intense, really stressed out, really anxious about this poem, because if I'm going to say a poem, it has got to be the best poem that these people have ever heard. And she saw me take myself off into a corner and like this internal wrestling with myself and psyching myself up. And then she said, suddenly, from being this anxious little stressed out person taking life far too seriously, suddenly I became full of verve and gusto, and I was able to suddenly do this fabulous, apparently, she's biased, but fabulous poem, as if, you know, I was just feeling it and it was all great, but she'd seen what it had taken me to get there. And I think that she observed when I was a little girl, I think that's basically what I'm still like today. I think that that is part of me, and there's a part of me that is deeply introverted and bookish, and finds being around people a lot quite like fun, but also really exhausting and sometimes tough. But then there's this other part of me that can bring the razzle dazzle, honey, if you need it, you know? And I think that, I don't know if I've married the two, but I think I can appreciate that the two parts of me make me probably a nicer, more compassionate person, and hopefully a better writer, because that introverted part is really sensitive, hopefully, and compassionate and in tune. And then the extroverted part is also compassionate and in tune, but in this bigger, different way. And hopefully, yeah, hopefully I can kind of see the benefit of both of them rather than seeing them as a bit of a curse, which is perhaps how I viewed them in the past.
Well, I can definitely vouch. You're doing great. Both sides show up with lots of empathy and lots of care and lots of love. Have personally experienced your love, support, and guidance, so can vouch. And I'm glad that you mentioned Granny, because you know the book is dedicated to Granny. She's a huge feature throughout. She's obviously been a massive impact in your life, in your journey, and you know your iconic look as well. So when we think about looking to the future, your hopes for this book, what would you have hoped your granny would think of the book, and what sort of impact do you hope the book's going to make for whoever it's for?
I think that when you ask me what do I hope Granny would have thought of the book, it's quite hard, because my honestly biggest fear isn't some kind of people saying bad reviews. It's if Granny wouldn't have liked it. That's honestly my biggest fear with the book. But what I hope, and what Naomi tells me when I feel vulnerable about that, is that Granny loved me. My granny loved me, and my granny, she was a showgirl, honey. She would have loved the attention in the best possible way. She was the most glamorous woman I've ever met. She was the Grace Kelly of grandmothers. She was gorgeous, so fabulous, and so charming and funny, and idiosyncratic and wonderful, and very well dressed. And yeah, that she would have loved that this was, as well as being a way to share a really personal story that hopefully connects with other people. One of the happiest discoveries I've made with the book being published is it's actually a way to honour Granny. And when people talk to me about the book, so many people have talked about her and have said, like, she's got main character energy. Oh my God, she sounds fabulous. I love how you talk about your granny. I love my granny. Let me tell you about my granny. And I love that. So I love that it's a way for her to live on, hopefully, and hopefully it honours her. And in terms of what else I'd like people to take from the book, ultimately, I want people to feel comforted. I want them to feel entertained. I want them to feel empowered. And I want them to feel that however they identify and whatever struggles they're navigating, they're beautiful, they're valid. It's the world that's broken, not them. And that they're gonna be okay, and we can have a laugh, and we can get through this. And yeah, I hope that that's what the book brings to people.
Wow. Well, from the way that you talked about your granny in the book, I imagine that she would think it was brilliantly intelligent and witty and bold and gorgeous. So thank you for writing it, and thank you for sharing so much of that, because it really did just make the story so personal and warm and easy to connect to. And I think when we connect with each other, we really unarmor ourselves and we're vulnerable with each other, we really do make a big impact. So you've written a memoir. You are the editor-in-chief of the biggest leather magazine like in the world. You are partner to an incredible woman who's kind and supportive, and your biggest fan. Literally, we've seen on social media you've got the biggest fan. It's almost like from that 13-year-old little Roxy, you've climbed the mountain, you're wearing the lesbian queen crown. What's next? What could possibly, top this? What are your plans? What are your hopes?
I think that what are my plans? What are my hopes? My plans are to try and make the most of this opportunity with the book to connect with people and try and get it out there and try and get get people reading it, get people enjoying it, get people feeling empowered, entertained, comforted, or just like they've read a fun book. So definitely that. I think maybe more writing. I'm a writer, so more writing, maybe more books. Watch this space. And I think that I don't know. It's so funny, like you said, like from going as, the younger me to then like, oh, I've got the lesbian crown. And I suppose when you say it like that, I kind of have, but it doesn't really feel like that, because what your day-to-day reality is, you just feel like, God, life's hard. God, this is tough. God, I'm doing these things and it's going to be okay, but whew, how are we going to cope with everything? So it doesn't necessarily feel like that, but it is true that where I am is far from where I was. And I think writing the book also helped me appreciate that. And I think that that's powerful too. So I'm hoping to take that forward.
And just before we go to some audience questions, sorry, I just need to ask you this because I'm really interested now. You're a Virgo, so you are, born to be a queen. You love the theatre, you love performing. This is part of your whole demeanor, I guess. Is there part of you that would, do like this? For me was like a rom-com lesbian movie waiting to happen. So we talk about how much we want our stories to be told, how much we want our stories to be heard. Your story is like, if I watched this at Christmas, I would be happy. So could you envisage this story or stories like this being more mainstream? Would you be happy for that?
Yeah, I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. And I agree, it'd be a great rom-com. I agree. I think so. So yes, absolutely. That would be brilliant if in the future there was like further adaptations of it. And yeah, maybe on screen, maybe that would be good.
Awesome. Okay, thank you for asking that, because that was really just for me. Because you know, when you just read something that's so queer and you just want more of it, you're like, they should make that into a TV series. They should make that into a film. That's exactly how I felt after reading this book. So thank you again for reading this book, and thank you for being so open and honest and brave with me as well. I've got nothing but love and respect for you. We have got a few questions in the Q&A box. Are you happy for me to go through those? Okay, so Saba, hi Saba. Saba wants to know, what was one of the best bits of advice your granny gave you?
Mm. I think that one of the best bits of advice my granny gave me, I mean, what springs to mind is all the fabulous beauty tips and fashion advice. Um, But in terms of like life advice, the thing about my granny and me was that from when I was very young, we would have these long, in-depth conversations, just the two of us. And there's one in the book, it's how it starts, in fact, is the two of us she's doing the washing up, I'm doing the drying, and we're having a heart-to-heart over the dishes, and we would talk about human nature. We'd talk about what was going on in the family, because there was a lot of gossip, but we'd also talk about like the nuances of people. And one of the things which we would talk about was how people can behave in certain ways, but we both had, I think, an innate belief of people's inherent goodness. And I said to her, you know, I think most people are doing their best within their limited understanding and experience of the world. And she loved that. And she'd often remind me that I'd told her that when I was very young. And she also believed in goodness. She also believed in people doing their best from where they were in their lives. So I think that that's something that we used to talk about. And with my granny, it's not necessarily like she'd give me advice. It's like we'd have open, honest discussions, and I'd come away with more self-knowledge and knowledge of people. And do you know what, actually, the other thing, which isn't necessarily advice, but by watching how my beautiful granny would navigate life, that is the biggest lesson that I've had from anyone. That lesson of how do you move through the world with grace and humor and charm and warmth and authenticity? How do you have a conversation with someone where you make them feel good and you're connected? If I have any skills in that, it's all from her. How do you find joy in life and joy in glamour and joy in a relationship? How do you live a good, fulfilling life where you're good to people and you have joy? And she taught me all that just by watching her. And you know, that's I hope that I channel some of her in my life, and she's certainly who I look to and who I think about when I think about how I want to move through the world and how I want to interact with people.
Well, you definitely do embody that as you move through the world. And you actually talk about a little bit about that in the book, when at the end, when you're talking about doing a speech at the DIVA Awards. And I actually remember seeing you that night and seeing you with Naomi in your little corner preparing. And then in contrast to that, seeing you on the stage, living that sort of oxymoronic self in real life. And you set the stage alight, you were incredible, you lit up the room. So well done. And from sort of talking about the advice you've gained, moving on to the advice you've given, we've got a great question. For a queer woman who wants to write her story and publish a book, what advice or tips would you share?
Okay, great question. So if you want to tell your own story, then I would say keep a diary. If you haven't always been keeping a diary, start keeping a diary now. Because when I was putting together this memoir, I was going on a deep dive into my own history, And I've always been a person who wrote. So part of that deep dive was literally reading those old teenage diaries, which is the most cringe-making thing you can do in the world. And there's even some snippets from those teenage diaries in the book.
I
Of
love
the
those
interview.
diary entries. They are some of my. I actually thought, is this real? But I thought it's got to be real. So yeah, I love those parts. Sorry.
Oh no, I'm glad you enjoyed them. No, it is real, it is real. And so that was great. So definitely, if you want to tell your own story, then start writing it and start particularly interrogating your own life through writing. And I always find through writing, even if you're not writing for a reader, even if you're just writing for yourself, it's always how I've processed life and figured out how I feel and what I think about things. And then I think, what other advice would I say? I would say if you want to share your own story, then you want to think about what makes your story unique to you, and you want to embrace that. You also want to think about how your story is relatable to other people. And you want to think about your own experience, but also the world that you have lived in and existed in and continue to live in, and how those two things have interplayed. And then again, I think with storytelling, it's all about the journey. So you want to think about how you want your reader to feel. And do you want your reader to feel entertained, delighted, shocked, appalled, outraged, moved, empowered, galvanized? Like, how do you want them to feel? And you probably want them to feel different things at different moments in your story. So then, as a writer, you want to be using your craft and figuring out how can you take a reader on that journey. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Does that answer the question?
It definitely answers the question for me. I think you're always good at answering questions about writing. You're an expert. In fact, sometimes when I've written something for Diva, I actually feel like, oh gosh, I'm scared to send it to Roxy because she's so great, and we hold you in such high esteem. So great advice as always. There's a fellow Virgo here in the room, and we know, as always, with fellow Virgos, we always get deep. And so Rosie is asking about, I'm going to summarize actually because it's quite a long question, but Rosie's done 20 years of stand-up comedy and has been reflecting on the use of humor to sort of negate the seriousness of trauma that we've experienced. Not necessarily to excuse, but maybe to just protect ourselves from some of those minority stresses that we mentioned. So I think the question here is there a point that humour just becomes a defence mechanism? And I guess what should we do about that? How should we navigate that as queer women who still have to exist in a world that is sometimes not safe for us or making fun of us?
I think that's a really good point and a really interesting point. And for me, it's about being mindful about how and when, as a writer and a storyteller, I am deploying my humour. So the book is not funny on every page, and there are some parts of the book where I'm dealing with really quite traumatic stuff. And in some of those moments, there is no humour. But what I find as a writer is that if I have built almost a rapport with my reader by easing them in, letting them get to know me, making them laugh, hopefully, making them feel warm and connected. And I use humor as part of that. I use humor and warmth and different writing techniques, but I use those as part of that, and voice, to get them feeling connected. Then once you've got a reader on side in that way, they are so much more willing to go with you to the different places, I find. So then when, we've all had a laugh and we've been on this bit of the story, but actually now we need to talk about something really, really serious. And I think because we've had this lightness before, and because we have forged this connection, the reader and the writer, I think they're going to be more willing to go with me to those places. And I do use humor a lot in my writing, but I am very intentional. It's not accidentally funny. Every funny bit has been crafted to make it as funny as I could. And every bit which I did not want to be funny, because it's time to be serious now, the humor's gone. And then we are talking very, very seriously, or we are going to a really painful place, or we are going to an impassioned, galvanizing place, whatever it needs to be. But I think they're more likely to come with me to those more difficult places if we're great mates from all this lovely laughter we've had together.
Wow. Well, as I said, reading this was like being there, was like being your friend, was like laughing with you, was like crying with you, was like holding my breath alongside all of the times that you held your breath, and, you know, screaming, see you next Tuesday on the streets at points as well. So I definitely have travelled with you. So I think you did an incredible job of using the power of humour to highlight some really incredible things. I'd love us to go over to your key takeaways, Roxy. It's been incredible being in conversation with you and hearing audience questions now. We're just getting to that point of time where it's your key takeaways and then over to the audience reflection.
So my key takeaways, handily, I've got a little reminder now on the screen, that's good. My key takeaways, okay, don't panic if you haven't got everything figured out in your career, but also your life right now, because I think that there's a lot of pressure. Some of it societal, some of it we put on ourselves to have got everything sorted and to know exactly what we want to do with our career and with our life, and to have all the answers and all the achievements super quick and super young. And I don't think that's how it happens for everybody. It certainly is not how it happened for me. But I also think that the fact that for 10 years I was trying to make it as a writer and failing to do so, the fact that I didn't write this book when I was 21, and no shade to anyone who does, I think that's amazing. I'm so in awe of people who are writing fabulous, powerful books when they're in their 20s. I think it's fabulous. But the fact with this particular book, and with me specifically, the fact that I've lived a bit of life, the fact that I've had, you know, I've taken my knocks and I've had my ups and my downs, and I've had my heartaches and my traumas and my pains, and navigated that, I think it makes me a stronger writer. I think it makes the book deeper and richer. And I think that actually you can get a lot from those things. And actually it's made, yeah, all the kind of career failure has ended up being great material for the memoir. But even if you're not planning to make a memoir, I think just to not panic if you don't have it all figured out straight away, and it's okay to take the time that you need. And then the other takeaway was a bit of writing advice, which I was saying earlier. It's about thinking really intentionally and consciously about the effect that you want to have on the reader and how you want them to feel. And it's not always the same thing the whole time. You might want them to feel different things at different moments. And it's the same if you're a speaker. You might want your audience to be laughing at this moment and to be quiet now for this serious point at this moment. And it's figuring out how you want them to feel and then working out as a writer, okay, how can we craft this so that it really takes them on that journey? And then my last key takeaway was that your story matters. So I've, you know, told my story in the book. But if you also would like to tell your story, and if you also have that feeling that I write about, which so many of us have, of not feeling seen and not feeling represented, then you can be empowered to create that representation yourself. And through my work at DIVA, there's an interlude in the book called Confessions of a Professional Lesbian, and I talk about some of the different things that I've learned through my work at DIVA. And one of them is that through interviewing hundreds of fantastic, creative queer people and women, the thing I've heard time and time again is they needed to see their story and they didn't, so they told it. And you can do that too. And in doing that, you'll heal something in yourself, but you'll also be spreading that and healing other people too. So that was the other thing that I wanted to say.
I'm so glad that you said that, because it leads me nicely onto exactly what I was going to say, because I think my whole key takeaway from reading your book and having this conversation with you has been just what I was saying at the beginning when we were talking, is that seeing the parts of you that have shocked me, inspired me, excited me, drawn me in, have given me an opportunity to reflect on parts of myself that perhaps I've been ashamed to talk about publicly or share with the world. And so you being so free almost gives every other queer woman permission to free herself. So thank you for writing this book and being so open and vulnerable. Get this book, buy this book, buy it from everywhere you can buy books. It is, you know, I think it's definitely added to my list of must-read books for queer women. So thank you everyone who has joined us, and thank you again so much, Roxy. We would love to have your feedback, so we can continue at We Create Space to build on these sessions, to make them more engaging, and to hear from all of the incredible queer authors that you might want to hear from. So please take a moment to scan that QR code, complete the feedback, and let us know how you felt about today's session and any ideas you have about moving forward. Roxy, you are an icon, a legend, a queen of the scene. And I think what you have demonstrated by writing this book is the real power of doing the work, of being a kind, loving, inclusive, celebratory human, and really connecting to people and sharing those parts of yourself. So thank you for doing that. We love you. And good luck with the book.
Thank you so much, Shah. Thank you for your beautiful words, and thank you for being such a gorgeous interviewer. And I'm so glad and so relieved that you loved the book. Thank you so much.
We love it.